All right, I'm going to start. My name is Greg Higgins, Chair of the Natural Resources Commission, and I'm calling this public meeting to order at 7 p.m. on June 9th, 2020. The Commission will review wetlands filings under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Concord Wetlands Bylaw. Discussions at tonight's meeting will be limited to regulatory matters only. We are recording, and if anyone out there is recording, please let the chair know. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order on March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting virtually to ensure public access to the deliberations of the meeting. The public may access this call through video conferencing or telephone. Following the presentation by a petitioner and questions from the commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. If you wish to provide feedback, you will need to raise your hand. If you are video conferencing, go to the participants tab at the bottom of the screen and click on it. Once the window is open, go to the bottom and click on hand raise. The chair will call on you and your mic will be unmuted by the host. Please identify yourself with name and address for the record. You can also raise your hand from your phone by dialing *9. If you haven't already done so, please identify yourself on the screen, which I think everyone has. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of the commission, Delia, and the current petitioner. Once the commission has acted on an application, the petitioner is free to leave the meeting. Screen sharing will not be permitted unless absolutely necessary. In the event that this meeting is Zoom bombed and we're not able to get control of the meeting back, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be automatically continued to the June 16th, is it? Yeah, 16th, 2020 NRC meeting. All votes will be by roll call. And at this time, I ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Please, Ed.
Ed Nardi.
Nick. Nick, you're muted, Nick.
Nick Pappas.
Judy.
Judy Zonbrecker.
Lynn. You're muted, Lynn.
Lynn Huggins.
Thank you, Lynn.
Greg, just to clarify, it's the June 17th meeting if we need to continue.
Is it 7? Oh, yeah, 7. Oh, yeah, because today's Tuesday. Sorry, I did a quick math from today. Thank you. All right, let's get started. Tonight, thank you, and I apologize to all the petitioners for last week. Nothing we can do about it. I think it was the right thing to do. And we pick up from where we left off, which is to start by DEP file number 1371522, 36938A and 40A Commonwealth Avenue. Who wishes to speak for the applicant? And
Hi, Alex Patterson, ESS Group.
Hi, Alex.
We were here at the last hearing. Our first hearing was May 20th for the Juro Recreation Area at Warner's Pond. The commission had a series of questions and comments at that hearing, and the town's provided some supplemental information since then. Unless you'd prefer to do a more detailed introduction, I think the best use of time would just be to dive into that.
Yeah, I think we should go directly to the issues, and I mean, I know we want to get this as a town, we want to get this underway, and I think as a commission, we're behind doing that. I think we just need to make sure that we adhere to our policies and procedures, and that's what we're looking to do here. So carry on. Go ahead, Alex.
Bob, are you on the call? Or Ron? Okay. Oh, there's Bob. I think you're muted,
You
Bob.
must be muted or something. We cannot hear you, Bob. Still can't hear you.
Bob, you need to turn your speakers up. You are unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Let me ask a question, maybe Alex, while Bob's trying to do that, we can keep this going. Have the trails in our jurisdiction, the proposed trails, have they been staked yet?
I can answer
Um,
that, actually. This is Ron Hedrick from GPI.
Yep, go ahead.
No, they have not been staked yet.
I think that just to bring that issue up, I mean, until Bob gets his mic in order, that just seems to be something that we're going to want to take a look at and recognize the trees. Isn't that kind of the direction we're going in here? I mean, we usually have people, petitioners. I mean, this is for the, a significant public good. And I think the commission has indicated it's not going to ask you to locate every 6-inch plus tree in the jurisdiction. But we do need to have the ones in the trail located. The only way to do it is to stake the trail, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we are prepared to do that. We just, contractually, we have to kind of work that out, but I think we're prepared to do that. And my understanding is we would stake it and then we would make that available for your review. Is that the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think to expedite, I mean, let me speak it, and commissioners, please chime in. But from my sentiment, it seems that to expedite this, the quickest thing maybe is to stake the trails, and then we quickly have a meeting, get out there, see the trails, and move this thing down the field, and get those on a plan. So we approve a plan that's got, the invasive location and all the stuff on the plan. And we don't tend to, we never approve without having the items on a plan,
Okay.
Judy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think building on your point in terms of, not only staking and looking at the trails and the trees, I would be interested just in general on what the impact is in our jurisdictional area. And also because we own the pond and we have a vested interest, we're in a butter, how does that relate to the pond usage too? So I would just find it very helpful to have a better overview on the site to see like where trails end, where there's going to be potentially fences to keep people from going in the pond, dogs from going in the pond, that type of thing.
How long does it take to stake those trails? I mean, I know I don't mean in the field. I mean, how many days lining it up and getting the folks out there to do that? Is something you can do fairly quickly?
I think so, depending on our surveyor's schedule and everything, but it's probably, I'm guessing it's a couple days in the field to, I think it's a two-part thing. One is they would take our information, locate like the center line of the trail, so we would know where that is. And then we would probably have them do the clearing limit lines. And then we could determine everything within those in terms of the 6-inch trees or larger that are being impacted. So getting it staked is a couple, probably 2 to 3 days max, I would think. And then getting that information captured and put into the plans is sort of a time on top of that. I had reached out to my surveyor late last week because I kind of got word that you might be requesting that, but I actually haven't heard back from him.
Well, so is that, how do the commission feel in terms of, if we know where the center line is and we know roughly how wide the trail is, because we can discuss the width of the trail in a second here, but are you suggesting that before we would go out there, somebody would go out there, you would do the whole swath and recognize every 6-inch tree on the entire swath, get that on a plan, and then we walk it? Is that what your suggestion is?
No, I'm suggesting we could locate it in the field and survey into the field those limits, and then identify the trees with flags, and then those would be available for the commission to review. And then simultaneously we could be capturing it onto paper. So I think getting it into the field would be a quicker exercise than getting it on the paper, but that would follow.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, the rest of the commission can chime in. But in terms of the trails, if you do the center line, we know the trails itself is only going to be 6 to 8 feet. You know,
Right.
you walk it and say, well, there were no significant trees, so that's all right. Let's locate the rest and discuss those. But, you know, I'm anxious to see if I can't kick the can down the road. That's all. And it just seems
Sure.
if we drag, yeah, here's the schedule. You can't get on next meeting. The first meeting you could get back to us would be July 1. I'm just thinking of it from a timing standpoint, I'm going to be here regardless. So, and then the next time is the third week of July. So it was my understanding that we're trying to do this quicker. That's all. All right, enough said. But any thoughts on that from any of the commissioners? In terms of the width of the trail, I just Ryan and I had a quick discussion, a few minutes. I thought it was a pretty productive one. In terms of, I think maybe it's just not terminology, but you know, clearing is a scary word, meaning you're clearing. Thinning is a different word than clearing. It seems like you have to clear the actual trail that you walk, but it sounds like you're thinning the sides. Am I correct on that?
You are correct in that, and you're right. It's a bit of a word choice that it's we kind of throw those around interchangeably, but we're really talking about beyond the clearing limits, doing pruning and thinning, removing dead trees, lower branches that might be hazardous to pedestrians, trying to open it up a little bit for sight lines, sort of thing. But
I mean, is it your intent that people would be walking off the trail?
no, but the expectation is people may walk off the trail.
Well, I mean, when you say you're in the resource area and you're putting a path through it,
Yeah,
and your suggestion is to make it 30 feet wide, correct?
I think
The affected area, 30 feet wide, not the trail, but the affected area.
right. It's I think it's described as 15 feet of let's call it selective pruning and thinning on either side of the pathway.
So that's a 30-foot wide swath. Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, and can I just ask
Please, go ahead, Lynn.
why such a broad swath? And I also just, along with that, thinking about the path, since we're on that, you know, could the path be relocated so it's not in the 50 for starters? I know we'll need a waiver if it is in the 50. If it could be outside, that would be preferable. And why does that corridor need to be that wide?
The selective pruning and thinning is selective. It's the idea is to remove lesser plants, dead material. I think the distance has to do somewhat of, you know, a dead tree can fall quite a distance. So we're trying to just give ourselves a little bit of room to go get trees that might be a hazard to the trail. Selective can be kind of whatever you think it should be in terms of, you know, sometimes we would take lesser species that are competing with other trees, but we can kind of decide what's right and what's wrong on that. But the 15 feet is just a measurement, and it's just based upon, some of it is tree limbs can fall out of trees that are 15 feet away and drop onto the path. So we're just trying to give ourselves some working room.
Yeah, if I may, depending on how that's interpreted, I mean, certainly something that's creating a danger to the path is worth removing probably. But dead branches that birds might perch on, I mean, why? I mean, we're trying to keep people on the trail, not invite them to leave the trail.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, you know, the trails, so I guess I'd like to clarify just a couple things, is that we have in fact relocated many of the trails outside of the 50-foot area. So one area where we are within the 50-foot is actually out in the meadow area where we don't actually have trees except for one large tree that's Norway maple, that the alignment of the trail in order to have it be a handicap grades is removing that tree, but we're keeping the entire rest of of some really fabulous native canopy trees. So that area is within the 50-foot. It goes, a portion of it goes, and this is summarized in the area calculations that we provided you. So that's at the overlook out to the lake, where we do come over the 50-foot line, probably about 10 feet. We can probably maybe we can find that sheet on the drawing. So we're just making sure that we understand where we're talking about 50 feet and where we're talking about the clearing, because there are two different issues in two different places. So so at some point, maybe Delia, you could bring up the project plans, and
Sure, just give me a sheet number, Bob.
Sheet 19.
Excuse me?
Sheet 19.
Sure. Hang on one second.
Lower left corner there. Yeah, right there.
Okay, so here we are. Can I have pointing opportunity, or Delia, can you point to where there's a 50-foot line right there? Yeah, follow that around. So we're below 50 feet there, and the reason that we are below is that right at the 50-foot line, you see there's a dark convergence of contour lines, and there's about a 10-foot high slope in the meadow that drops off steeply. So we either have a space up on top where we have the path up in there that sort of curves around at the top of the meadow, as opposed to the path that's down low, which is really supposed to be the pathway to to be able to view and get closer to the water. Now, if you could go to the next page. And actually, just hold on one second. So within the 50 feet, we have the pathway that comes down across a grassy terrace. And then we've defined, there's an area of overlook, seating, and a little bit of a stone wall to sort of set you into the hillside there a little bit, to have a little cozy nook for people to look out to the lake. So the grading on either side of that is basically to accommodate that trail being built to accessibility standards of the slope of the trail. But the vast majority of that area, the area from that area to the right, is all through areas of where we're going to be remediating invasive plants. And the area to the left is basically a clear grassy meadow. So there's no tree removal through almost this entire area in here. So if you could go.
Bob, this Greg here. This begs the site visit. I think that a site visit is going to give us.
We have to do a site visit. Otherwise, we're going.
Yeah, I think this is like Cool Hand Luke. A failure to communicate here, and it's only because we don't know our subject well enough. And it seems to me, if we can get out there, some of these issues will be explained just by the visual of the field. It just seems to me, because if you're not taking any trees down, then that answers a whole lot of questions, doesn't it?
Greg?
No, go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, I appreciate the point on the trees. I guess I look at that drawing and it still, in my mind, begs the question, why does the path and overlook need to be within the 50 foot? Why not place it outside the 50 foot? What's the benefit of having the path that close to the water's edge versus further back?
Well, I think the steep grade, and we may see that when we're out there, Judy, we may see the steep grade.
But as I look at the drawing, though, you can move it up outside the 50 and there is a flat spot. So that I understand that, and I have actually been over there and walked around some. And a site visit would be good, but you move up and you do get to a flatter area and further away and outside the 50 foot.
And we do in fact have a path up in that location, but it's like two different experiences on the site. I think one of the things that we have, and this isn't, we don't consider it a problem, but one of the things that we think is going to be an innate desire of people coming to this place is to get to the water, and if we don't accommodate it, they will force it upon us with unintended
So that's what I was just,
That's my concern, quite frankly, is
Yeah,
a path that close to the water and it's still a steep grade. I'm concerned about people and potentially dogs still running down that slope to get to the water. The intent is not for people to get to the water. It's really for people to view the water. So that's I'm concerned about that.
Yeah.
And so question,
Can I
why
just-
can't it be further back?
Yeah, Kate,
can I just
please.
say something?
Sure.
So part of this was to get people to the water. That was a big draw. That was something that we heard quite a bit from. And so we're trying to do that in a way that is sort of respectful of the fact that we can get people there, but the long way. And part of it is that because of the steepness and the fact that we wanted the water path to be ADA accessible, we have a very long span that we have to be able to go through. And so we had a first iteration of this, which essentially had sort of an overseeing dock that was there to kind of bring people out, because one of the things that we heard is that people wanted to come in and have some kind of experience where their children can kind of play in sort of the open meadow area there, and they can walk down to the water. And so we were trying to bring them as close to there as we can without further eroding that large drop off that we have there. So we're not
Okay.
wanting people to enter from there, but I suspect, just like Robert said, that they're going to do it on their own if we don't provide some way of
What's
them
the
to get
management
close.
technique? What's the management technique that we're going to do there so that the people don't walk down that steep bank and erode it? What are we doing
Yep.
if the path gets there?
so this is what we've been talking about, and this has unfolded since this conversation with you folks came up as an issue. So Delia, can you take me back to that page? And then we're going to advance a couple pages further. And I hate for this to be a paper exercise. I think when we are all standing out there, the site will talk to you about like why we're trying to do it this way.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to sound kind of spooky, but the site is telling us what to do relative to its conditions and the reasons why we're doing it. So keep going. I'm sorry. We're going towards the landscape plans.
Do you have a page number, Bob?
I think it's going to be 25. Yes, here we go. Okay, so here you can see what we've got going is here's the path. And do I have the ability to have a pointer?
No.
No. Okay. Well, you can see right in the center of the page, there's the path that kind of curves down. It curves down the hill. Yep, right down there. Crosses right there is the 50-foot line, or no, keeps going down. There's the 50-foot line that we're behind with the overlook area, and then we're
Right.
coming. So I would remind you, these are 1-foot contour lines.
Mhm.
So we're only talking about 10 feet of elevation change. But what we have is we have a lower area that is in the meadow that we have the overlook, and the path is descending down through that and then climbing back up. You can see in the lower left part of the page there is a portion of the meadow from the path down to the shore that has had erosion and overuse such that the shoreline is eroded and damaged. So we have a fairly assertive plan for revegetating that with native species appropriate to a shoreline buffer that we're going to be planting. We have been talking, and we'd be glad to entertain with you, a condition or understanding that a portion of that path on the downhill side, within the context of sort of a vegetated edge, is that we could also run some kind of a discrete kind of, wire fencing or something like that with cedar posts. We don't want to have something that's highly visually obtrusive, But I think if we create a bit of an obstruction for people that might forge their way, down over the hill, to get to the water's edge, we are satisfying people's desire to go to the water's edge. If you go one more sheet ahead, Delia, can you dial that? Yeah, go down. So we're So on the left part of this page, where we're looking at creating a water access, we will eventually satisfy people's desire to get to the water's edge. But that's in the context of a fairly, of a wooded edge of the shoreline and going into the forest. We think that there is desire for people to have the experience of getting closer to the water out in the meadow area, just because it's so beautiful out there. So that's kind of what we have in mind. So we do think that we would like to stabilize and reinvigorate the native species that are the shoreline buffer. We're totally fine to have some kind of a barrier system, as long as it's discreet, but effective. And we think we can come up with some ideas. We're glad to provide you with examples of what we have in mind for that, and go from there. So this whole part that we've seen between these two pages, the center left of the previous page, and this part coming up where it says tree protection, that part is basically the trail through the meadowland. There's a tree line you see right through the word tree protection, and at that point we enter into the woodland area. So this is the area where we have the question about the trails and clearing. But you'll see here, and we've intentionally done this, is that all of the trails are above the 50-foot line. So you can, Deal, if you can help me with that, start right at tree protection there, and the gray line.
Except for that dip, Bob, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so the dip, so right below that point, we go below 50 feet down through the meadow.
Right, and then you'd come right up and out, yeah.
And then all the rest of it is above 50 feet. So at that point, we're in basically an upland condition. We're not in the pond shore buffers or anything like that. And we're walking through a third generation forest, of which there's a considerable amount of small standing dead trees and just a tangled mess of stuff from an unmaintained forest. So the reason that we've got the trail clearing in place here was basically to say, when we build a trail, the trail's 6 to 8 feet wide, and we have the footprint of construction, and because we're adding surfacing, to it to make it a accessible surface for people to walk on and have a wheelchair. We've got some grading on the edges. So say 6 or 8 feet wide and several feet on each side of that. So it probably gets to be about 12 feet wide in terms of the grading footprint, not including any major cuts or fills, which we don't actually have out here. And so what we're asking for your consideration is, beyond that footprint of actually building the trail, if there's a thicket of standing dead 2-inch dead white pine trees where we just have the skeletons of those trees, we'd like to take those and clean it up so that people have the visibility through the forest that is kind of, what most people find as a pleasing environment. And we're asking people to kind of walk out into this whole area. It's going to feel like some people like we're taking them out in the wilderness. And so, but the visibility through the area is what gives you the feeling of enjoyment and comfort, we think, in the forested environment. So what we're prepared to do is, when we stake out the trails, is we have an opportunity at that point to, we can stake out what's on paper, and we can also look at the stakes in the field and modify them. If we have a line of that trail and we slam right into the middle of a 12-inch oak tree, we're going to want to move that tree around it, or that trail to go around it, either up or downhill of it. And
that is precisely why we have petitioners put those sorts of trees on the plan, so that it's obvious to everyone that tree was circumvented around it.
Right.
You know that. Does it seem to you, and I don't know how people are coming here, and I'm not a psychologist, that the trail that dips into the 50, is that is that a primary, if you're going to the water, is that a primary trail or a secondary trail? Certainly from the parking, et cetera, it looks to me to be a secondary trail. In other words, you'd have to know that trail existed. Otherwise, you'd be going west to east on it, correct? Because you'd come out of the parking lot and drop down. The trails aren't named or numbered, but, or to my knowledge, they aren't. But you drop down on a tree either around the playground or a trail
Yeah.
to the west to get to
so
the
we have-
water.
Yep.
This would be
So
an
we have-
amble that one would take once they got down there and said, I don't want to go to the water today. I'm going to go left.
Right.
To be in the easterly direction. Because I
Right.
don't know how many are going to, the people that come off of Com Ave, however, by foot, I would reckon they might use this trail quite a bit.
Yeah, people coming in from Commonwealth are going to, I mean, this trail will be discovered as being the trail that takes you to see the water. And this is the trail where you can sit in the sitting area there and watch the snow geese land in October on it.
Yeah.
All of that.
So this is a trail, as Judy, I think is rightfully pointing out, this is a trail that we prefer not to have people at that low point. And I know you've got planting, I see what you're doing, but we should just think about, do we do a, I don't know, a rope to rope to rope, to think, or signage, I don't know how you keep.
If we do revegetation on the right side, if we do revegetation in our removal of the invasives, and if we do the revegetation plan as shown on the landscape plan, and we introduce within that corridor of plants some kind of a sort of, a natural wood post, like a cedar post with some kind of a couple strands of wire or something like that, that would impede people just charging through it, I think that we will succeed for, a significant percentage of people that might have some desire to get down to the water. So, and we certainly would protect the lower side of the path for that area.
Let's rather than football that here and come up with the answer, I think that's I guess my point and your point, Bob, is that let's have a resolution as to what at least we're going to try there for the permitting process to
Yep.
see if it works without making it look like we're putting a Fenway wall,
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Greg, I guess the question I don't know, maybe it's not now, maybe it's a little bit later that is going through my mind is if this were a private applicant who had a pond in their backyard or wetlands,
Right.
and they proposed this extensive a trail through the 50-foot, if we approve this, then they would have a good argument that we need to continue to do that with other applicants.
No, well,
I'm uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to weigh in before I do? Because I do have my feelings on this.
I promised.
I was thinking commissioners. I wanted to have a commissioners discussion on that if I could first. I mean, I'll say it this way, Judy. I'm trying to balance public good overall. And I think we tend, if somebody can show, and we do make it, our policy is that we do make variances to our strict policy when we see a significant, say if somebody does, only needs to do 200 square feet of invasives and they do 4,000, we do listen to that and give them. And I see this, and I'm not a water carrier for the town on this. It's just I truly see this as something that it will if we do this properly and respect the resource, I think the resource can take it and a lot of people will enjoy it. So that's my reason for not being as strong as you are, and I totally get your point on it. And if it were a private person, I'd say, show me that kind of value. Are you going to let the public walk this? No. Well, then you don't even come close.
Mhm.
I don't know. What do the other commissioners think about this?
I would.
Oh, Nick, go ahead. You're up.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my concern as I'm listening to this and looking at the plans is sort of balancing the natural state versus a manufactured environment.
Mhm.
And, I'm seeing, you're talking about what the public good is here to offset any incursion in the 50. And, the more building there is, the more trails there are, the more pruning you do, the less natural it is to me. And, I really have strong concerns about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's what the site visit hopefully will show us
Yeah.
isn't going to be the case. Lynn, you had a point.
Yeah, I just was going to add that we have many years of experience, particularly with waterfront, and we know what people's behavior is. And
Right.
we agree, they want to get to the water and they want to throw sticks for their dogs into the water. And, it's virtually any water body in Concord we can think of, be it the river, be it White Pond, be it Walden Pond, be it Hutchins Pond. We've had issues with that, and it's a very delicate balance. So I just think we need to be so sensitive to that.
I agree. No, that's it. We have to do this correctly so we don't end up with what we've seen elsewhere. Speaking of somebody, I think two people just mentioned dogs. Is it your intention to allow dogs on the trails? Are they to be leashed? We all, a couple of us had third-degree burns from discussing dog issues, and in terms of what people think our purview is and whatever. But I think from a town standpoint, as Lynn has mentioned, where dogs run free and chase sticks and go through the woods, they love water more than people. So a simple fence, etc., on a 50-foot incursion is probably not going to keep a dog on the trail if the dog smells and wants to go to the water. So I'm not really sure that there is a viable, that I can suggest a resolution to that, other than I think it's something that ought to be discussed amongst more than just maybe the rec and the NRC. But clearly on our land of jurisdiction, we find dogs can be detrimental. If that's what you're looking
And
at.
as I recall, the CLCT has had issues on some of their properties leading down to rivers where they've had to close them off. I think my concern with whether it's dogs or people is going down that steep slope to the pond, eroding that slope. And again, we know that happens when when dogs go into the water, and so it's, from my point of view, it's a matter of protecting the resource area that we are responsible for and the ecology of the pond. So it's, how you go about doing that, be interesting to see your proposals, but there is a concern with damage to the resource area from dogs going into the water.
I can tell you, my yellow Labrador really loved that pond.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can huddle with town staff and bring forth something that is reflective on the town's dog policies that would be across the board, and then have special consideration for this, for its unique characteristics that are here. I think at this point, I think that's what everybody's trying to say is, like, let's be consistent with town policies as a general, like, what are the dog ordinances? I don't know what they are, but we can look and see what the town policies are as a baseline. And if there are enhanced things that we need to do, either from the standpoint of policies, regulations, or the physical accommodation or restriction of access, I guess we can look at that. Yeah.
I mean, yes, you can come back with a proposal, that has alternatives. We're going to try this, and if this should happen, our next step to stop that from happening would be this, and if it continues, we would do X. And I mean, that could be something we could look at and say, can we live with the initial proposal as an experimental thing, but to be in the 50 with no proposal as to what you're going to do. How about skateboards and bicycles and the such.
Right.
What's all that about?
So we're not, so that pathway, because the pathway that goes down to the down where it goes below the 50. So in the current proposal, that pathway is shown as a paved pathway for the purpose of having it be a stable material that won't erode, as opposed to like a hard pack or gravel-like material, which at a 4.5%, which is how we've graded that pathway for accessibility, would have some potential for a little bit of erosion. So it is a paved pathway. It is smooth. It is possible that a child might want to go down there on a bike. I think we would probably, if we were to put a sign up anywhere about anything, I think we would not encourage people to ride their bicycle down there. That is not, we're not creating a bicycle path along the lake.
That's in our operational plan. There's no bikes, there's no scooters, so we have a place that if you come off the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, for example, there's a place where you can keep your bike in that section that's up by the restroom, and we're going to have signage that, effectively says these are walking paths or jogging paths. They're not for, wheels of any kind.
And we're surfacing the paved path with a surface called chip seal, which basically pours a layer of crushed stone under the very top of it. So that will not be skateboard amenable. So skateboards won't be going. Skateboards will be out on the bike path.
So you could make a footnote on the plans that said that these plans will be restricted to foot traffic only and wheelchair or that sort of thing, but no.
I think that yeah, we could do that. I mean, these are construction plans, but I suppose if they're part of, I think that would just go within as a condition of the permit to be executed with signage and other regulatory and management decisions.
I think Delia is writing that down now for a condition.
Yep, that's fine. It's a good condition.
I think it's a good condition.
One we would welcome.
Len, please.
Changing the topic a little bit, and this is a fairly minor question. I do note that I know the parking area is outside of NRC jurisdiction. That said, I just wonder, is the lot going to be plowed in the winter? And if so, given the contours here, are we concerned about having some sort of indication of what you're going to do with snow, where you're going to put it, so it doesn't just go down the hill into the pond?
Yes. So we aren't plowing the entire parking lot. What we thought we would do is plow a pathway into there and leave 4 or 5 spots that are closest to where the current Bruce Freeman Rail Trail parking area is, enough that an emergency vehicle could get down, frankly, and turn around if someone was snowshoeing or doing cross-country skiing. And much like we do with the downtown area, if it's quite a bit of snow, we would have to, basically haul it out, like we do with downtown. So those would be the dump trucks and other things like that, and haul it out so that we're not having it there. But we also, much like we do with White Pond, there'll be no sand or salt. So it really is mostly for emergency access and turnaround. People, I would imagine, might come down and park, in one of the spots, but we're talking about 4 or 5 spots total.
Can we, another condition of permitting is, sounds like, can we get a list, just get that all sort of between meetings done? We get those management things done so we can move on to the site walk and get this. Yeah.
I do want to just address what Ms. Higgins said, or Huggins said, in regards to the stormwater. Is we have a very extensive, I'm going to call it a nature-based stormwater system for this site that we have literally been working on for almost 6 months. And we've taken every basically engineering requirement that the town has for preserving water quality at all levels from a public works standpoint, and transformed it into a performance, natural looking landscape with ecological intervention, plantings, and using the natural conditions of the site such that the water that coming off the site, that there is no direct flow from parking, from pavement, or anything into the lake. So I just want to clarify that so that we don't get off track on that. It's just, we have made, I'm going to say, extraordinary steps to innovate this, while at the same time being completely in compliance with the town's professional standards for how stormwater is supposed to be designed.
Have the town engineers looked at that?
I appreciate, thank you. I appreciate the
Good.
answer, not trying to derail us in this. Probably on one of these plans, but sometimes the print is so small, I cannot even read the plan.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you
Yeah.
for answering my question.
Thank you. It's Ed. Yes, Ed, please.
Again, somewhat to Lynn's comment that this is out of our jurisdiction, but just looking at the plans, obviously part of it is focused on ADA access, which is fantastic. But I was a little surprised when I looked at the parking lot plan that maybe this was last generation, but I was surprised to see only 1 or 2 handicap parking spaces. So it doesn't seem to quite balance out the desire to make those paths ADA accessible, but very limited parking for those type of people that need that kind of pathway. So again, it just seemed a little out of balance with that, great desire in design to get those people to, more natural environment.
Yep. I mean, we would be fine to designate more spaces as handicap spaces, and I don't think that that's, if that is a demographic of appeal to the site because we've created a totally accessible site. I think the thing with design for disability is it's more than just a wheelchair. It could be, it could be someone that's blind. It could be, it could be any number of other life configurations that cause that make that sort of require or suggest the accommodation of people in something other than sort of a rustic hiking trail, which 90% of the population don't really like to go and trip on sticks and stones and and rough topography. They love to just stroll through the woods and have that comfort and joy.
Thank you.
I think what seems what's going to push this down the road a bit is a site visit. So can we get that the trails that are in? Yeah, Judy, please.
Are we going to come back to other questions before we close out?
Well, I was wondering whether the site. Ask any question you need to ask.
I don't think the site visit would answer this question, and this has to do with town conservation volunteers. And how reliant is your plan to that in terms of removing the invasives, et cetera, and setting up the trails and your budget?
Okay, so the area in question is particularly what we call the hairpin, the trails that are in the woods. In the woods there is an emergent growth, probably all about 3 to 5 feet tall. Next page. It's kind of unfortunate, it's spanning 2 different pages there, but in the woods there, for the trail system behind where the barn and bathroom building is, in the woods there is emergent undergrowth, 3 to 5 feet in height mostly, some even smaller. There's just little sprouts of buckthorn coming up everywhere. And so what we thought, and this was a brainstorm with staff, was wouldn't it be basically a productive and fun exercise to basically get, have some, basically pull together a cadre of volunteers out there, and we form sort of a phalanx across the site from the shore to, or from the 20-foot buffer, or wherever we choose to basically hand pull the small buckthorn saplings so that we can get those out of there. If we go into that area and then start grading for the trails or any other things that we're going to be doing for construction, we run the risk of spreading that around and having it sprout in other places. The suppression of the tree canopy will be basically retained in the plan, even though we, are talking about clearing for the trails and things. The vast majority of the deciduous and evergreen tree canopy we have overhead will be preserved. But we'd like to basically give the ground story, I'm going to call it a shave and a haircut, of the invasives that are very small. And every time I go there, I walk around and I end up coming out of the woods with 2 bundle loads, bundles of buckthorn that I've just pulled right out in the, from the soft sandy soils. And I toss them in the back of my car, and my dog looks at me and says, "Why are you bringing that home for?"
Yeah. So back to my answering my question, please. My question was, how will you be how will you recruiting the volunteers? Who's going to management? And if you are unable to get volunteers, is your budget sufficient to remove that buckthorn?
If the town decides or the volunteer pool is unable to take it on, then we'll have it be in the contract of the projects. It's not a major cost thing. It's just something that we thought would be fun to get people's hands on it and enjoying it. So I guess, and the thought was working with town staff and, maybe with the support of the NRC or, with staff on conservation, is that we could tap into the Trails Committee, conservation volunteers who probably work on other sites around the town, and, and basically have sort of an afternoon work party where we would be involved in, we would be assisting and facilitating that.
I think
you'll be organizing it then, right?
We'll be
No,
working.
for the record, we had received quite a bit of interest from students for the most part, and also other folks in town in the West Concord committee about being able to sort of get people multi-generational involved, and is there something that they could do? And so it wasn't born out of the idea of a cost savings by any means. It was really trying to bridge the sort of generational gap, plus using some of the sustainability initiatives. And so we have quite a few people that have expressed interest. I would imagine we wouldn't have a hard time, getting that together if and when we're allowed to, congregate in groups that are larger.
Okay.
But just to broaden the topic just a tad bit, it's really none of our interest who's going to do it in the sense of volunteers or you paid people. The fact of the matter is you're going to, it's in your plan to take out invasives in areas on the site. We should have those located on the plan. And if nobody volunteers, you have to hire it done, but it's part of the plan. That's where I think are interested. I think once again, we're probably thrown a little bit off the scent. And not intentionally. I think you're right, Kate. I think there's people in the town that will help out without question. But we get off on a subject that's really not in our domain as to who's going to do that, in the sense that it's going to get done and supervised by somebody that knows what they're doing. That's what we need to hear, not whether we get volunteers. I don't mean to stamp on your question, Judy, but I always thought saying who's doing it is somewhat irrelevant to us.
Well, the only thing I was concerned about was
it
seemed like there was some indication that we were going to organize it, and I was concerned about that.
That's kind of what I'm leading to, is that not that we wouldn't help, it's just that that's not usually what people, they just come in and say, we're going to get out these invasives,
Right.
and we'll, bang. So, any other thoughts on the commission?
Yeah, the whole section on the event
Nick.
barn discussed previously, and the occasional uses. My concern is similar to what it was last time, which is that when at town meeting we approved spending a lot of money for this, it was primarily for the sake of nature and recreation, and incidental occasional use of the facility to other members of the community. My concern is that could get out of control. Not now, not immediately, because the people involved now know what the ideas are. But in several years, if there are no limits on how often this can happen, what types of groups it can be done, what sort of process there is for deciding that something's appropriate, I'm very concerned about the spillover effects, the impact on parking and access to do want to enjoy the site for.
I think that's, and I think we all are, and I raised it as well last time, and I hate to jump in and all the time, but my thinking on that is it's beyond our jurisdiction. That is something when this is brought to the select board and everything, that's when I think we chime in and say, as citizens, residents, we would prefer that no alcohol or whatever it be the rule. But as NRC board members, I think what we tried to ask and have asked of them is, how are you protecting the resource, not whether you're going to allow a roulette wheels in the pavilion,
Okay, but just within the document as it currently stands, there are inconsistencies that concern me. So
Yeah.
for instance, in one place it says an assembly such as a community hall that serves no food or drink. Then there are references to food and drink, or to food at least. And then there's specifically the statement, food waste and trash must be bagged and placed in the facility dumpster. Now, do we really want food placed in the dumpster where it's going to attract whatever animal? That is not in keeping with the site's purpose. So I find
We have found that people do not take their waste. If you were to go down to White Pond at any time in the last month. And so we have a Parks and Playground division that's going to be tasked with going to the site at minimally once a day, but during the high points of the season, twice a day, to ensure that the trash is emptied and that the receptacle is locked appropriately. So we are confident that we will have a good management plan for this.
okay, so it's not there now, but it will be in the management plan. It's not there now, but it will be in a management plan, that detail?
Which detail?
The one you
The,
just,
the amount of cleanings?
yes,
Yes.
whatever. Okay,
Well, it's in the Parks and Playground budget. That's in the general fund. It was funded last year and it'll hopefully be funded this year too. So that details basically what that crew does and what they're responsible for doing.
okay, as long as it's documented.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Lynn, please.
Just one final question about the boat launch. Can we just have a brief discussion about that?
Sure.
The discontinuance of the boat launch off of Com Avenue that has been part of a ongoing plan for the dredging of the pond.
Well, no, yeah.
I'm sorry, the
we-
discontinuance, I'm not sure.
The existing boat launch on Com Ave.
My understanding was that was going to remain open and accessible. Is that not the case?
That's my question.
Oh, well, I had
As
never
far
heard
as I
of,
know, it's going to remain open and accessible and used.
I had not heard of any plans to discontinue it. As a matter of fact, I thought that the dredging was only going to enhance it, although it would be nice to have a second means of egress, and I'm hopeful that that's what the Sandy area would be able to provide.
On the Giro land, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? I'm going to open it to the public here. Is anybody out there in the outer reaches have a comment or a question? And while I'm waiting, maybe Bob or whoever's managing the staking and everything, if you'd work diligently on that and let us know ASAP. We need what, 48 hours minimal to schedule a meeting. So if you can give us
More than that, Greg, we need to post within 48 hours, but it takes us longer to find a time that works for all of the commissioners.
correct.
So I'm assuming that, like other site visits, is that the site visit intention is basically to view the site and to partake any information that's clarifying on the site relative to the interpretation of the plans onto the ground, and that the site is not, we're not actually taking testimony, we're not negotiating
Correct.
decisions, not doing anything like that on the site.
Correct.
So that's
Correct.
saying that for the record, that's still our impression. So I
Correct.
guess from our point is, from the commission's standpoint is there a time frame that you feel comfortable scheduling yourselves out in your, in your next future over the next couple weeks of when we could schedule the site visit? We'll work with our survey crew to schedule the staking of the trails in the 50 to 100, with particular focus in the 50 to 100 foot zone. So you
Well,
can
can
see
you
the
have it
woods.
staked by, can you have it staked by Friday?
No.
When can, my point is, we will try to accommodate within a few days once you don't have to have it staked, but if you know it's going to be staked next Tuesday, we
Yeah.
could say Thursday or Friday or whatever the days are, you'd have to figure it out. We would
Okay.
then chat as to which one we could make, let you know, and be done with it.
Probably reasonable on our end, and we have to check with our survey crew
Yeah.
is middle to latter part of next week is probably is a possibility, and we'll try to move that as quickly as we can. So
I think
why don't we
that's
check
right.
on that and then work with Delia to schedule it, to schedule a mutually convenient time for everybody to get out there, and we'll have the staking in place. And any other, and I think that what we would say is that while we're out there and it's being staked, is we make some decisions in the field on the behalf of preserving trees. And we can show you where we made those decisions. So,
Right, and it seems to me you should be ready to probably take us down to the future boat launch, take us around, show us where there's everything in there, all
Yep.
these points.
might as well do it while we're all there. That would be
Just
great.
so we all get the picture and be done with it.
In terms of what's staked, well, not the whole trail system, but would it be possible in a couple spots to stake out what the 30-foot buffer on each side is? That would help me sometimes.
We can probably take some chalk or something like that and just show where the line would be, or we can put some flagging out.
Probably just flag a tree or two
Yeah,
on either
not
side.
everywhere, but just at certain places. That would help.
A little sample.
Yeah.
And it might be beneficial to show where the 50 started, where you start the dip into the 50 and where you come out of the dip in the 50, so we know what sector we're clearly talking about.
So are we specifically looking at the trails location in the 100-foot to 50-foot zone where we're cutting trees?
That's our jurisdiction. That's our jurisdiction.
And then out in the meadow, we have trails in the 100-foot and 50-foot zones. So do you want
Those
to
are in our jurisdiction.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. We'll
But
work with our.
we're keenly interested, as this 45 minutes has shown, on the inside the 50.
Inside the 50. Okay. All right.
I don't see any public comments, and I'd love to see some if anybody had them, but I just don't see them. So I think we'll push this. We'll continue this. I think the best case basis, guys, would be the July 1st meeting.
I guess the only topic for me that's been untouched right now is we did provide some documentation relative to the level of parking we're providing. There was a brief discussion about handicap parking, and I guess what I would say is we've given you the basis for our decision programmatically, partially based upon the town parking standards for sort of facilities like this, as well as occupancy. We've given you sort of a composite picture that rationalizes the amount of parking that we have. As I said, there isn't a formula we can use to calculate the parking that's on this site, but I guess we said we sought for a comfort level of a quantity of parking, both in terms of its ability to fit the site and feel appropriate, as well as be calibrated to a level of use, because people are going to love it here and they're going to want to come. And parking can be a governor to that to some degree, but if we don't provide enough, then we'll have unintended consequences and people will
I think our comments the prior meeting had to do with the number of people that parking might bring and what protections you are given of the resource area. You can have 5,000 parking spaces outside our jurisdiction. We have nothing to say about that. But if we see 5,000 parking spaces, we're going to ask you for what we asked you for was how, given that, signage, et cetera, skateboards, et cetera, what are you doing to protect the resource area? We're protecting resource areas here. We're not determining parking, pavilions, or anything else. But when you bring them in, that does trigger our interest, and we're asking you to come up with the management plan that protects the resource area.
Okay.
Are you with me?
So,
and I appreciate your presentation last time, but it did get us, a little bit off kilter as to what our function is here.
So the document we provided a couple weeks ago has attempted to lay that to rest for the rationale, and I think we're working with you in terms of the optimal forms of management for it.
That's it.
Yes, hoping that we don't have to go back to like, why do we have so many parking spaces, or questions like that. So
Right.
we're just hoping we can move on some of these items that they don't have to come up again.
Well, I would hope the same.
Good.
All right. Do you want to continue this to the 1st of July or the 22nd?
I'd say we want to be here on the 1st. We absolutely want to be here on the 1st. Yeah.
Okay. Do I need a motion for this, I guess? Do I have a motion to continue this hearing until July 1st?
So moved.
That was Judy. Do I have a second?
Second,
That was Nick. I do have to roll call this. Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Lynn? I saw her say aye, even though I didn't hear it. Nick?
aye.
You're okay, Lynn. I saw you. I'm a
Sorry.
lip reader. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. It's been an interesting discussion. I think got to keep working on it. That's all.
Thank you very
Next.
much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you all very much for your patience.
Okay. Thank you all.
Yep,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Bob. It is at least 7:20, so we'll bring up, don't have a file number. It's 42 Birch Drive. Who's here to discuss this slight alteration?
Hey, everybody. I'm from LEC Environmental, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Sean Lyons. And we filed this notice of intent application to raise the existing house that's present at the property and build a new house. This property is in the eastern part of Concord, and it's on the west side of Birch Drive, south of Bedford Street, and generally northwest of Lexington Road and Old Bedford Road. This is the existing conditions plan here. Birch Drive is to the toward the bottom of the plan, and that is to the east. North is facing to the right. So you can see there's a bituminous concrete driveway that extends from Birch Drive and provides access to a basement level 1-car garage. The house is there with the deck off the rear of the house and another smaller deck off the side. If we continue to scroll to the west, I guess, you'll see the bordering vegetated wetland with the 25 and 50-foot no disturbance zone. There's a shed back there now under the just in the 25-foot no disturbance zone, and a couple of landscape islands in the backyard with a few trees and some overgrown brush. So if we want to go to the proposed condition, I can explain to you the project. Essentially what Sean is proposing to do is tear down the existing house and use the existing foundation to build a new house. There's a slight increase in impervious area off the front of the house with a proposed covered porch. That's outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. As you can see, that the 100-foot buffer zone line basically goes right along the front of the house. The deck off the rear of the house will be reconstructed. No change in grade is proposed. There's not going to be any significant site grading. However, we are proposing to eliminate the shed from the site. We're also proposing to remove the back turnaround or a good part of the back turnaround of the driveway to eliminate impervious area and, of course, eliminate all pavement within the 50-foot buffer zone. And by doing that, we're actually reducing impervious area in the buffer zone from roughly 19.2% down to 17.2%. So we actually have a modest decrease in impervious area. The thick line that occurs along the driveway and then around the back of the lot, and of course excludes all the trees, that's the erosion control boundary. It'll be 12-inch staked compost filter tubes. There's a detail on the top right of the plan. And we also have a couple of, notes on the plan. And this was, some of these plan changes were derived from Delia's initial comments. Basically, we are ensuring that construction equipment will be inspected and cleaned at the end of each workday to limit the spread of invasive plants. And all material and equipment stockpile will be located within the driveway or the front yard. Again, we're not really proposing any grading on the site, so we don't anticipate any significant piles of soil or anything like that. Very limited erosion potential. We're not cutting down any trees. I think Sean will probably want to update some of the landscaping around the house, but that's about it. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Are there, so there's no new work. All work is outside the 50 except for shed removal.
The shed removal and removal of some of the existing driveway, correct.
And the existing driveway, which is a plus. Do we need a waiver to get that shed out of there?
We shouldn't need a waiver to improve the existing condition.
Yeah, it does, yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure we asked the question. Are there any invasives on the plan, any invasive work planned on the site?
You know, there really isn't. Some of the wooded landscape islands in the back, I noted some bittersweet growing there. I'm sure Sean would be open to, a condition requiring the removal of that. Obviously, he's going to want to make it look nice because he's going to be selling the house.
Yeah.
The wooded area along the wetland boundary does have a few sapling Norway maples, but the ground cover is largely jewelweed and Virginia creeper, with the area labeled wooded in the buffer zone back there.
Yeah.
So there's not too much of an issue. The wooded landscape islands that are in the backyard is where I recall seeing some bittersweet. And that's, I think, just due to lack of maintenance. It appeared when I delineated the site back this time around 2019, lawn hadn't been mowed, so it hadn't been maintained. I think the house was abandoned.
But it's been traditionally a backyard that's mowed and there's
Oh yeah,
a couple of pockets of wooded area.
yeah. I think they're just wooded landscaped areas. They probably mulched them at some point.
Yeah.
And I imagine that Sean Lyons, the applicant, will want to maintain that.
Does anybody else have any thoughts, questions? Seems a pretty. Do I have any public comments? Staff, do you have any thoughts? Delia, you have anything that's on your?
Nothing additional.
I don't see any public comments. Does anyone else see anybody raise their hand or do anything? Are we ready to, we're not ready to, on this, are we? We have nothing written up, do we? Delia?
Oh, we just got the revised plan today, so
Yeah, so I
to
think,
have this for the June 17th.
yeah, I think I would suggest that we continue to the 17th, and Rich, you're more than welcome to come, but I think at that point we would issue, so.
Okay.
Did we get a DEP file number?
Well, we need one.
Not yet.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, we need DEP file number 2, but I would assume just a week.
Not that far away.
Yeah. Well, let's continue to that point and we'll play the cards as we're dealt them, yes?
Okay.
All
How
right
many
with you, Rich?
copies of the plan would you like us to send in?
Just 2 full size, and the commission has the electronic version, so that's fine.
Okay. And I will follow up with DEP to see if we can't get a file number.
Yeah, I mean, all right, we'll be ready if you get a DEP file number.
Okay.
No, I see no public questions, so could I get a motion to continue this until the 17th?
So moved.
Lynn? Okay, thank you. Judy, you second?
Yeah.
All right, Judy, how
Second.
say you?
Oh, aye. Excuse me.
Lynn?
Aye.
Nick? I read lips. I saw that Nick said aye. Ed?
Aye.
Thank you. And I'm an aye as well. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in, Rich. And
My pleasure.
you're welcome to come on the 17th.
Okay.
Moving right along, 396 Great Meadows Road, DEP file number 1371525. We're all familiar with this site. We've had a phase one here. So Molly, if you would take it from there and let's get to the nitty gritty, and we know where you're located.
Yeah, I was going to say you guys are very familiar with this site. So
Correct.
the property is 396 Great Meadows Road, and this is phase 2 of work on the property. It looks like there's a lot going on the plan, so I'll start with the small things and work up from there. There are 2 existing walkways that are proposed to be replaced. The first one is in front of the dwelling. The second one is to the left of the dwelling, kind of off the patio. And currently both of them are brick, and they are to be replaced with dry laid stone. And then the stairs on the left of the property near the existing brick patio, those will be removed completely. And then on the right side, those stairs going down are currently wood. Those will be replaced with corten steel edging and a pervious pea stone tread. And then there are a couple walkways proposed. Currently, there's no safe way to get to the back of the property from the outside of the house. So we proposed a walkway from the stairs on the right side to the back of the house, which will consist of corten steel edging and a pervious pea stone walkway as well. Similarly, there's another walkway in the back that we were proposing. Same thing, corten steel edging, pea stone topping, and some stairs down from the existing brick patio. And then getting into the bigger stuff, there's the driveway it's pretty flat as is, but it drops off significantly on both sides. This is both unsafe, and it also causes erosion easily with anything driving on it. So what we're proposing to do is lower the driveway about 2 feet. And what that will allow is a sufficient shoulder on either side of the driveway, which will provide a safer means to get up and down the driveway. The shoulders they'll be grass, and we're actually decreasing the total amount of impervious area on site. Currently the driveway is an inconsistent width, and we're proposing to keep it a consistent 10 feet wide. And there is a slight realignment to the driveway due to getting those shoulders on both sides there. There is some true.
When you say an inconsistent width currently, what's the variables?
It's like 10.3 to 11 and change. So we're decreasing that down to 10 feet. And then there's on the driveway turnaround, there's about, I think it's a 9-foot, 8-foot retaining wall that's currently in poor shape, and it's unsafe. So that will be replaced, and there is a structural plan that was developed and submitted with the notice of intent. And there, like I said, there's some tree removal involved with that. And then various landscaping additives to the property as well, but I will let Gail and Miles get into the nitty gritty on that. But that's the overall aspect of the project.
And we do have, you're working in the 25 and 50, and we have waivers for both?
Yep.
I assume the commission has read them, and if anyone had issues with them, they should speak up. All right,
Just to be clear, so lowering the driveway by 2 feet, you just come in and are going to regrade and take the soil away, is that correct?
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
But this requires Board of Health, yeah?
Yeah, so the existing system is underneath the driveway in that turnaround area. We did a lot of, exploratory digging, and we actually cameraed the pipes because we couldn't find one of the leaching pits. But both of the leaching pits are significantly deep. So really what that entails is lowering the D-box and rerunning the pipes from the tank and rerunning the pipes from the D-box to the leaching pits. So, but we will be submitting a septic plan to Board of Health for that.
And that pretty much, until that's done, we're, our hands are somewhat tied on that.
Yep. Could that be a condition though, if we submit a plan to Board of Health and obviously contingent on the approval of Board of Health?
Well, no, because my initial knee-jerk reaction is no, because they may approve something that you haven't put in front of us that requires you to do something that I don't want you to have to file another notice of intent because we've approved something and you've got to make changes. You've got to file all over again. So
Understood.
you can't start until till Health has signed off. So I don't think once we get through this discussion, and if it meets our approval, I don't think we're going to change our minds, but I think we need to see what Health is going to ask. And they may say, no, we're not going to let you go down 2 feet. You have to go down at least 3. I'm making something up here. So I would say it's difficult for us to do that. And we rarely, if ever, do that.
Understood.
We always get in trouble when we do it.
Yeah.
So,
we'll get on that right away. So.
Yeah. Any other questions from commissioners?
No.
Lynn, no. Judy?
No.
Staff, anything? I mean, it does seem like we've got erosion. It does seem most of the bases have been answered. But
yeah, and we have we're in the process of both the turtle protection plan as well as the botanical survey. So that's an ongoing process, but currently the turtle protection plan has been approved. I think there is a conditional, or there is an email approving that as well. So as soon as that turtle barrier is up.
Is phase 1 and 2 being done simultaneously, or?
I think at this point, probably, just because it's taken so long with NHESP to get their approvals and the surveys and all that. So I think, obviously I don't know the actual details of that, but I do think that the homeowners
I don't know if that matters at all. I mean, you did it in 2 phases, which all could have been done in 1, I guess,
Could have, yeah. There's a lot going on this property, so
yeah.
Might make it a little less confusing in 2 phases.
Are there any public comments?
So Greg, I would just point out, it would be helpful to understand what that phasing looks like. So
yeah.
At this point, essentially, a lot of the landscaping and invasives removal was supposed to happen in May. And, the turtle protection plan and Britain studies are still sort of ongoing. I understand why that isn't occurring, but it would be helpful just to know what that phasing looks like so that you're not doing one thing and precluding another.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So we'll submit a phasing plan for both phases. There's different contractors for both. So I actually have the phasing for phase 1, which will be submitted with, anything. I believe Colleen sent an email with some other additional things. So that will be included with the submission for phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay, so just the other thing was just clarification on some of the removals by zone. Just, so you have Colleen's email.
Yep.
So those are the only things, Greg, that we had noted that it sounds like you'll have that in by.
But you'll have that. Do you are you in front of health or have you filed?
No, we haven't filed yet, but we'll do that as soon as possible, obviously. So
They're shorthanded over there for a while.
yes, yeah. So
Tragically.
yeah.
All right. You want to go to July 1? We're not going to next week. July 1, or do you want 22?
22. Definitely July 1st, if that's the next available.
That is the next available. All right. Do I have no, I see no public comments whatsoever. I've waited long enough. Do I have a motion to continue this to July 1st, please?
I move to continue to July 1st.
Thanks, Nick.
Second.
And Ed seconded. I'll do the roll call. Judy,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Lynn. Once again, I'll read lips. Lynn said aye. Nick,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Molly, very much.
Thank you.
July 1st, I'll see you then. If you're ready. Certificate of Compliance, 42 Shore.
Yes, so this was for some addition, an addition that was done a few years ago that I should have advised you to close or to issue a certificate at the last meeting, but I was a little flustered. So it's ready to go. The site has stayed for a while. So this is the one. There is a current deck and walkway proposal in front of you.
Okay.
It's ready to go.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 42 Shore Drive.
Second.
That was Judy. I'll poll you. Ed,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Thank you, guys. Other business, we seem to have some tree problems on Barrett's Mill Road.
So there was a tree, the homeowner removed 2 trees inadvertently, not realizing they were within NRC jurisdiction. He was concerned about them coming down on the property, on his house. He has taken them down the site table. He did have down swamp mats for the work to be done. And he is willing to do bittersweet removal. There's a lot of bittersweet out there that he's been tackling and is doing that by the roots. And so it seemed like that was an overall benefit to the property.
Anybody have any thoughts, questions about that? I need a motion on that?
No,
What's the ad? We don't need.
No, we don't need a motion, I don't
No.
think.
no.
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 Anybody have any issues? No issues?
No.
Okay, I'm looking for a much better motion.
I move to adjourn.
Woohoo! And
Second.
Judy seconded it, and
Yes, I
Ed
did.
says yes. Judy says yes. Nick's
Yeah.
got his thumb up. Lynn's got her thumb up. It's unanimous. Thank you all very much. See you next week.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Aye.
very much.